Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really pulling back the curtain on one of the biggest tech companies out there.
Yeah, we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
We are. We're exploring the ambition, the power dynamics, and honestly, some pretty surprising personal interactions at the very top. This is all coming from an insider's perspective.
Right.
Our mission really is to try and uncover the complexities of operating on that global stage. Everything from trying to influence world policy right down to navigating some intense internal politics.
And it's a great chance, I think, to understand the challenges, the ethical questions, too, that pop up when you have this huge technological power meeting global governance and, well, personal ambition.
Definitely.
The material gives us this unique window into the human side of these massive corporate decisions. It's fascinating stuff.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's start with Mark Zuckerberg's view on Facebook's headquarters in Menlo Park.
Yeah.
The narrator mentions how Mark kept asking her, repeatedly, why she wasn't based in California. And he was apparently quite serious about it. She needed to be there, near him.
Yeah, and that insistence tells you something, doesn't it? Menlo Park wasn't just, a big office complex. It was becoming this kind of West Coast White House.
Right.
You had heads of state, like Japan's Prime Minister Abe, making it a standard stop right after seeing the U.S. president. Silicon Valley was really flexing its political muscle.
It really was. And Mark kept pushing her to move.
Mm-hmm.
He'd make these little digs of apparently joking about New York, saying he didn't get the appeal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when she said, well, you don't know New York, he claimed he grew up there. She shot back, New York City, not the suburbs, Mark.
Huh. Bit of banter there.
A little bit. Highlighting their different backgrounds, her being from New Zealand. And his response, what made you know? You're from New Zealand.
Uh-huh.
So that kind of set the tone.
Okay.
But what's really interesting is his communication style. Mark apparently wasn't big on giving praise or affirmation.
Right, known for being quite reserved.
Exactly. But then, totally out of the blue, he sends this encouraging email. May 29th, 2015. Thanking her, saying her work was a really important part of connecting the world.
Unexpected.
Very. And she took that, plus all his earlier comments, as basically a direct order to move to California, even though, nobody else on the policy team was there.
So not explicitly ordering her, but...
She felt he was sort of flattering her into it rather than force, using that unexpected praise.
That definitely speaks volumes about leadership styles in those kinds of environments, how much weight implicit communication can carry. That email was a real departure for him, seemingly.
It seems so. And then later, after she'd figured out the move and told him, he sent another email July 2nd. She called it a gracious email.
Okay. Saying
he was glad you're moving to MPK and looked forward to working more closely. Again, apparently quite surprising coming from Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
It just shows the power of his, let's say, requests.
Subtle but powerful.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears. This next part is fascinating. Facebook's huge and ultimately pretty troubled push into China.
Ah, yes, the China effort.
There's all this initial excitement. President Xi Jinping was supposed to visit Facebook HQ. They were hoping maybe to announce Facebook's entry into China.
A massive deal if it happened.
Huge. They even made a Facebook page, #ZivasUSA, for the visit. It somehow got over 5 million followers.
Which is weird, right? Since Facebook was banned in China?
Exactly. Internally, people were apparently wondering how that audience was, algorithmically boosted.
Raises questions, definitely. But the company was clearly desperate to get into that market.
Desperate is the word. Then came the setback. She chose Seattle instead. Amazon, Microsoft, not Silicon Valley.
A definite snub.
Big time. And from there, the hopes of actually meeting Xi just kept shrinking. First it was maybe announcing entry, then it was scaled back to just a pull-aside chat. Then finally, the goal became just getting a longer than normal handshake at the Microsoft campus event. Mark was ready to fly across the country just for that handshake.
Wow, just for a handshake.
And even that blew up. Mark posted a photo of the handshake on his Facebook page, trying to make it look like he was part of the big CEO meeting she had. But the photo, it was taken from an angle showing Mark's face. But President Xi's back.
Oh, no. That's a huge protocol breach in diplomacy.
Massive. The Chinese government was reportedly furious.
I bet.
Then you had this scene. Agonizing debate on Mark's private jet. Should they take the photo down?
What did they do?
They left it up. The thinking was the damage was done. It was already everywhere online.
Wow. Talk about pressure. And it didn't stop there, did it? The asking Xi to name his child
Oh, right. At a White House state dinner, Mark apparently asked President Xi if he would offer a name for his soon-to-be-born daughter.
NG.
Refused. Politely, presumably, but refused. Just adds to the picture of awkward ambition, maybe.
Definitely paints a picture.
So, moving from China,
Mm.
let's talk about the UN efforts. Internet.org. This was another huge push.
Right, connecting the world.
The narrator really pushed for Mark to speak at the UN General Assembly. The goal was to get Internet access included in the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs.
Which sounds reasonable now, maybe, but back then.
Apparently, the idea was initially met with actual laughter. Like someone said, "You mean you're here from some internet site to tell me that giving people the internet is more important than ending child mortality?"
Ooh, tough crowd.
Yeah. But they persisted and eventually got a few references to connectivity into the 2015 draft goals.
And to back that up, they launched this big campaign, right? The Connectivity Declaration.
They did. Spent over $1 million on full-page ads. New York Times, Wall Street Journal.
Got celebrities involved. That bizarre bedfellows party, as the source calls it.
Totally. Shakira, Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, Bono.
Oh.
Quite the lineup. They even set up this huge innovation pop-up thing at the UN, VR headsets, a prototype drone for delivering internet, really going all out.
Trying to make a splash.
And Mark's speech itself, it went over really well. The press was glowing. CNN, Mark Zuckerberg, internet access can eradicate extreme poverty. Wired. Zuckerberg to the UN, the internet belongs to everyone.
So a PR success initially, but then things got complicated.
Very complicated.
This is where you see the risk of, big announcements that maybe aren't fully baked. First, there was that hot mic moment at the UN luncheon.
Right. Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, pressing Mark about taking down anti-refugee posts on Facebook in Germany.
Yeah, caught on audio, awkward. But then came the really big surprise.
The on-stage announcement.
Exactly. Mark just spontaneously announces that Facebook would bring the internet to refugee camps.
Which sounds great, right? Except
his own team had no idea it was coming, including Chris Daniels, the guy actually running Internet.org, completely blindsided.
You can just picture the chaos behind the scenes. The source mentions these frantic internal emails flying around.
Like, where did this come from?
Literally. Chris Daniels apparently wrote, "Does anyone know where the offer of Wi-Fi to refugee camps came from? And then we would appreciate a discussion on these announcements before they are announced."
Understatement of the year, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up decision internally wasn't exactly what you'd expect from the announcement.
What happened?
They decided to pursue a sustainable business model, meaning the refugees would have to pay for the Wi-Fi.
Pay. Refugees in camps.
Yeah, which prompted Joel, another exec, to ask, the obvious question. Do the refugees in these camps have a source of income?
A pretty fundamental question.
Right. The narrator realized then that no meaningful Wi-Fi was likely ever going to be delivered. She felt she'd just been used for a publicity stunt, basically. A cavalier or cynical announcement.
That's quite a disconnect from the UN speech headlines.
A huge disconnect. Which brings us right to the mission itself and a pushback against Internet.org.
Yeah, there was significant opposition, wasn't there? From digital rights groups.
Significant is right. 67 groups from all over the world signed an open letter to Mark Zuckerberg laying out their problems with it.
And their main issue was?
Their core argument was that Internet.org wasn't the real Internet. It was a stripped-down, limited version.
The walled garden idea.
Exactly. They argued it violated net neutrality, the idea that all Internet traffic should be treated equally.
And security was a concern, too?
Big time. Yeah. They pointed out a lack of security features, no real moderation for harmful content like terrorism, hate speech, fraud, even sexual content. No encryption, no two-factor security.
So basically pushing these complex, dangerous problems onto populations least equipped to handle them.
That was exactly their argument. They saw it as a bait and switch, really. Just a way to get more people onto Facebook, not provide genuine internet access.
A pretty damning critique.
It led to some tense moments internally, too. The narrator describes this video conference with Chris Daniels, the head of Internet.org.
The one who was blindsided by the refugee announcement?
That's the one. She said the call was just full of accusations, anger, and vitriol.
Ouch.
And adding insult to injury, apparently the meeting room name displayed under his face on the screen was Wicked Witch of the West.
Oh, you can't make this stuff up. That's unfortunate timing.
Terribly unfortunate. But it shows the internal friction, right?
Clearly. There was a real debate about what Internet.org actually was.
Yeah. The narrator argued, look, let's just admit this is about user growth. Let's stop pretending we're saving the world.
But others disagreed.
Elliot, another executive, pushed back. He felt Mark saw it as both growth and brand building. Doing good and looking good.
Which is a common tension, isn't it? Corporate goals versus public perception, especially when you claim altruism.
Absolutely. And the name itself, Internet.org, became a major point of contention.
Because it sounded like a nonprofit.
Exactly. The narrator kept pushing, saying the name was deceptive. It wasn't the Internet, and the .org implied nonprofit status, which it wasn't.
And it caused practical problems, too.
Yeah, she argued it was actually hurting them in some countries, like Brazil, where the government had apparently already forbidden them from using the name because it was misleading.
So she took this fight directly to Mark.
She did, leading to what she calls a tense showdown. She described Mark as combative and at times surly.
Resisting the name change.
Resisting hard. For over 20 long minutes, she says, while she, the only woman in that meeting, tried to get him to compromise.
That sounds incredibly difficult. Did he budge at all?
Eventually. He first agreed only to change it to free apps, just for Brazil.
A very limited concession.
Very. It took another whole month of arguing before he finally agreed to change it globally to free basics.
Wow. That really shows how hard it can be to challenge the founder's vision, even on something that seems, well, logical.
Definitely highlights the challenges of internal dissent.
Okay, so beyond these big projects, the source also gives us glimpses into the internal culture, especially around Sheryl Sandberg.
Right. It mentions she was increasingly absent from some things, like that whole Internet.org saga.
And others stepped into the void.
Yeah, particularly these young, often recent graduates who became sort of consiglières, trusted advisors, confidants. The source uses the phrase, part business, part lady in waiting.
Interesting dynamic, wielding power by being close to power.
Exactly. People like Sadie, mentioned in the account.
And there's that intriguing bit about Mark and Cheryl's own social media presence.
Oh yeah, the hint that their engagement, their follower counts, were managed using all of Facebook's tools.
Implying they might have been, let's say, gaming their own system, using insider knowledge or tools to boost their profiles.
That's the implication. Raises questions about transparency, doesn't it? When the platform heads are also its biggest influencers.
It certainly does.
The account also touches on a really difficult trip to Davos for the narrator. She was heavily pregnant, final stages, difficult pregnancy.
But her bosses wanted her to go.
Insisted. Despite the risks, they offered these, frankly, unconvincing reassurances like, oh, the flight attendant assigned to the trip worked previously in the medical field.
Oh, dear. Not exactly reassuring.
Not really. And it also shows how Facebook started to leverage global events or was seen as a tool during them.
Like after the Paris terror attacks.
Right. Cheryl apparently sent an email pointing out that terrorism means the conversation on privacy is basically dead because policymakers were suddenly way more focused on security and intelligence.
So analyzing crises for their impact on policy and the business.
Seems so. And politicians started coming to Facebook for help, like the British PM David Cameron asking for support against the Brexit vote.
That shows a real shift in power dynamics, doesn't it? Government seeking the platform's influence.
A definite shift. But let's get to a really personal and frankly quite uncomfortable incident detailed in the source.
The private jet incident.
Yes. Returning from that Davos trip, the narrator is exhausted, heavily pregnant. Cheryl comes out in her pajamas.
Okay.
And directly tells the narrator, come to bed, meaning join her in the jet's separate bedroom.
Wow. That's unexpected. And uncomfortable, surely.
Extremely. The narrator felt very awkward, especially because she had this embarrassing incident before where pregnancy made her snore loudly on a flight. She did not want to share a bed.
Understandable. What did she do?
She declined, politely tried to demur. But the request itself...
It speaks volumes, doesn't it? About power, boundaries, the sort of unspoken rules.
Totally. The unspoken rules with Cheryl about obedience and closeness, as the narrator puts it.
And nobody else on the jet said anything.
Silence. Total silence. Which just reinforces the dynamic. The source talks about the rewards for being in that inner circle close to Cheryl.
What kind of rewards?
Things like designer clothes getting placed on boards, access to vacation homes, that sort of thing.
And there's that example with Sadie, the consigliere.
Right. Purchasing very expensive lingerie, over $10,000 worth for Cheryl and about $3,000 for herself, on the company dime, seemingly.
Wow.
And these suggestive emails between them about it, like Cheryl saying she was happy to treat your breasts as they should be treated, it paints a very specific picture of that inner circle.
It certainly does. A very intense and perhaps blurred line between personal and professional.
Seems that way. And the fallout from the narrator refusing to come to bed on the jet.
What happened when they landed?
Cheryl's only comment to her was a terse, "You should have got into bed."
Oh, cold.
Yeah. The narrator tried talking to senior colleagues later, Joel and Elliot. Their advice: stay quiet, don't make waves.
Protect the relationship or just avoid trouble?
Probably both. Another colleague, Debbie, tried to downplay it with a joke, saying something like, half the department had probably been in Cheryl's bed by now.
Trying to normalize it, maybe, but...
But it left the narrator feeling completely iced out, like she'd crossed the line by refusing. And being weeks away from having her baby, she felt she had not much of a choice but to leave the company.
What a difficult position to be in.
Incredibly difficult. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it really throws that central tension into sharp relief, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The gap between the stated mission, connect the world, do good, and the often messy reality of how power actually works inside these places. The politics, the personalities, and these stories, these anecdotes, they really hammer home why it's so important to look beyond the official statements, to scrutinize how these incredibly powerful companies operate. Because their internal dynamics, the decisions made for personal or political reasons, they have real ripple effects on global policy, on individual lives.
For sure.
It makes you ask, when a company has that kind of global reach, what should we expect from its leaders? Should they embody the ideals they promote? How do things like personal ambition, internal pressures, how do they shape the actual ethical choices being made?
Those are the big questions, aren't they?
Yeah.
And maybe a final thought for now, listening. Think about the courage it takes. The personal courage needed to challenge things inside an organization like that. And maybe consider what the real cost of leaning in, as Cheryl famously put it, can sometimes be for individuals caught in those power dynamics.
A very sober